There is undeniably a mental health crisis within CrossFit. Mal Obrien dropped out due to her mental health. Addams dropped out due to an ED. Thankfully, she's back this year. Ellie Turner has also now dropped out, citing both injury and mental and physical health. Carey has also dropped out, and the reason she states is because of her religion and that she wants to focus more on that. But a lot of people are speculating in the comments that it could be to do with her mental health. And then Amanda Barnhart put up this post saying that she wanted to quit CrossFit, and she actually isn't going to quit CrossFit. She is still in the season, but her post really got me thinking, how many other athletes are feeling like this? The reasons Amanda mentioned is she's got a bit of a shoulder niggle going on. She's getting really frustrated with that. She didn't feel like fresh and motivated after her deload week, and she just felt like, what's the point in everything? There is so much pressure in the sport of CrossFit, and there are a few reasons that I can think of for why this is taking such a savage mental toll on a lot of the athletes. And the conversation is also spreading within the community. Talking Elite Fitness have done a couple of really good podcasts based on this. They also had Cara Saunders on, and Cara made some interesting points that men and women might differ a bit hormonally, and that competitive athleticism takes a big toll on a woman's body, more so than it does on a man's body.
Hormonally and mentally and emotionally, women can hit that burnout point a little bit more. I think there's a lot of pressure through social media and through the media of the sport for women. I think there, especially as athletes, there becomes all of these extra things, how you look and how you put yourself forward, and then like that is real. Like there's just a little bit more to manage, and we do just function different.
And the science behind this is basically it can stop your menstrual cycle, it can stop certain hormonal processes. There are loads of athletes that have lost their period because they've become like really competitive at a sport, and it does take a toll.
Oh, maybe I could do this better, maybe I could feel better. And
by hearing somebody and you're like, I can relate with that type deal.
Yeah, and I think women stick together like that,
She also alluded to the kind of stereotype that women listen to their body more and men tend to push through. And there is a bit of an epidemic for men to have this hustle culture, kind of ignore their feelings and how their body feels, ignore pain and suffering, and that's almost like a badge of honour, and to push through it anyway. Whereas for women, I think there's been a lot more conversation recently about looking after our mental health and well-being, and that's really important, and listening to our bodies, and this kind of a compassionate approach to our bodies and fitness. And I think there's quite a stark difference between the social media that we see aimed at men and the social media we see aimed at women surrounding the conversation of athleticism and sport and fitness. Cara was pointing out that maybe more women in the space coming out and saying that their mental health is suffering and that they're taking a step back because of it might be encouraging others to check in with themselves and wonder whether they're feeling the same. And unfortunately, a lot of people in the comment section have branded this as weak and not being like mentally strong enough, but actually taking a step back for your mental and physical health, checking with your body, listening to your body, that is a huge sign of strength, especially in a society which puts so much pressure on us to just grind and push through, to ignore our emotions and just get on with it. It takes a huge amount of strength to be vulnerable and to listen to ourselves. So I actually think it's a really good thing that more women in the space are talking about this, and that it might be having a knock-on effect so that others look after themselves, especially some of the teenagers within CrossFit that need to learn this early on, and they could quite easily come back to competition in a couple of years and have their peak then, when they are mentally and physically in a better place. Cara also raised that women face more critique on their bodies and performance than men do, and that there is generally more pressure on women in the sport. And I can definitely see that. And the FemFit Society did an article on this the other day, highlighting how different athletes like Danielle Brandon are treated when facing like frustration in a workout and getting annoyed in comparison to Josh Bridges. Like they relate to Josh Bridges and they're like, oh, it's okay that he's getting mad and swearing and throwing stuff. But when Danielle Brandon does it in the middle of a workout, like somehow that makes her a bad person. When she's just expressing a normal human emotion and getting a bit frustrated, like she's painted out to be a bit of a bitch, but like Josh Bridges isn't. There's definitely a double standard in various areas of the CrossFit space when it's linked to like the conversations around men and women within the sport. And this commenter put it really well. This was on one of the Talking Elite Fitness podcasts. I really think the CrossFit community puts an insane amount of pressure and coverage on young female athletes relative to male athletes. Even now, Olivia Kerstetter is a household name with expectations to perform, and she is just a top 20 athlete. I can't even think of a male equivalent. Maybe Jack Farlow, just my thoughts. And that is such a good point. I think there is a hell of a lot more coverage on female athletes. I think Olivia is maybe one of them because of her links to like Jacob Hepner, but there's definitely more focus even when they're like lower down in the ranking, I think, on female athletes, and just more focus generally, and not necessarily in a positive light, and that can put on a hell of a lot more pressure on these very young athletes. They also pointed out in Talking Elite Fitness that there is more female teens, and obviously having that pressure at such an early age could have a big impact. Cara herself says she couldn't have coped with it at 17. I definitely couldn't have coped with it at 17. Like, my life was very different then. I can't imagine the strength that they must have to deal with this at that level, and all the online hate and criticism at that age is crazy. My thoughts on the sport as a whole and why it might be causing some of these mental health issues and issues with well-being is that CrossFit is not very trackable. Sure, you can track your metrics on like the bike and like various different implements, the weights you're lifting, the amount of gymnastics that you can do, but you have to be good at everything, and there is no way of knowing at any stage that you're good enough. There's no ceiling. You might get to the games and they might program stuff that is completely different to anything that you've really trained for. Like, there are loads of new movements that can come in at any stage, combinations of movements can change loads. And yeah, I know we know that. I know that's what we signed up for. It's supposed to be constantly varied functional movement. But my point is that differs from every other sport on the planet. In triathlon, in high rocks, in marathon running, in swimming or pure weightlifting, any of that, you know when you're getting good. You know when your metrics are improving, when your weights are improving, when your times are improving, and you can feasibly track. Even in something like high rocks, which is functional fitness based, it's easy to track if you're getting better at it, and if when you turn up to the elite competition in a couple of months, whether you're going to do well or not. Whereas in CrossFit you have absolutely no idea. Even the semi-finals aren't a good indication on whether you're going to do well, because they can completely change it at the games, and they often do. There are lots more random implements and like sea swimming and paddleboarding and other stuff, which I love as a spectator. I love to watch that, but we've got to acknowledge the pressure on the athletes, and especially the pressure on a young athlete. Like, if I told you right now, you need to be good at everything. You need to be like the absolute best you can be, better than anybody else at literally everything, but you're not going to know exactly what those things are until you turn up. Like, how much anxiety would that give you? For me, it would give me a lot of anxiety. And like, that is the expectation we're putting on them, especially like someone like Mal. When we're saying she's going to be the next tier, we're saying to her, you're going to win this. So you now need to know everything that's going to come up and whether you're getting better at it, even though we're not going to tell you what that is or what kind of format that's going to come up in. Like, obviously that's going to have an impact.
I'm like, I just can't put so much of myself on the line and so much risk for something that's just so uncertain, and at any moment someone's going to come in and change. Like, and it's just going to flip on its head. I can't do that and can't sort of take away from other areas, but obviously it's still good in a sense. I think there's some work to be done in that aspect, for sure. Yeah, just some consistency there and what that looks like.
And Cara also touches on the uncertainty within the sport, and also the disparity with some of the judging and other little things that might need tweaking. There is this like constant debate on whether it should be constantly varied or the best test of fitness, and sometimes I think those oppose each other. Like, when we bring in more of the like party trick elite gymnastics, is that really a test of fitness? And expecting the athletes not just to be the absolute fittest they could possibly be, but also be good at things that they might not know are going to come up, that is just even more pressure. Lauren on Talking Elite Fitness did suggest that maybe the teens should be put into like team competition early on, and I think that would be a great idea. Having been a team athlete most of the time that I competed in CrossFit, it is much more fun than competing individually, and you do feel a lot less pressure. On top of all of this, CrossFit doesn't actually pay much unless you're right at the top. Athletes have to build a business or do sponsored work around it, and now sponsorships are tied more to audience and personality and how people relate to those athletes rather than the athletic performance of an athlete. It might also be a factor that these athletes that have built up enough sponsorships within the sport and able to earn a living from their social media platform might realise that because they've done that, they don't necessarily need CrossFit, because CrossFit doesn't give them much financially to contribute to their yearly living wage, whereas their sponsorships are mostly what pays them. them. And if their sponsorships are based off their personality and how much their audience relates to them and not necessarily their performance, then it gives them the freedom to leave if they want to. And there have been a load of angry men in the comments, obviously, saying athletes shouldn't be allowed to have sponsorships if they aren't performing in the sport, but that's not how it works. Sponsorships aren't tied to your ability anymore. There are loads of content creators in various different niches that have various different abilities that have sponsorships. Like, get mad at the system, but it's still going to be there because the people that buy from our sponsors just relate to us as people, and that's all the sponsors want. They want sales to come out of it. They just look for athletes and people and content creators that will like the product and that will relate to the person that wears it. They don't have to be the best at the sport anymore, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Some athletes at the top of their game are not very good at showing their personality or making content that people relate to, and some people that are not as good at the sport are much better at those things. So I think we need to stop framing that like that's a bad thing. Like, it's great that people can make a living doing something that they love, and if that's one of the things that's helped Mal continue to do fitness and enjoy her life whilst not having to participate in a CrossFit season, then I'm happy for her. I'm really glad more people are acknowledging that this is going on, and the more people that speak about having these mental health struggles within CrossFit, then other people will start to feel like they can open up about it too, and that can only be a good thing. Mal Obrien's journey outside of CrossFit has been really inspirational, but she has some points that everybody needs to listen to. I think everyone that does a sport at any level needs to listen to what Mal has to say. If you're interested in hearing that, then watch this video next. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!